Brayden Ellis didn't have time for trouble, but trouble had a way of finding him, especially when his 6-year-old daughter was waiting for him in the back of his rusty Jeep, still strapped into her booster seat with a juice box and a half-eaten granola bar. He spotted her the moment he stepped out of the hardware store downtown. A woman in a pale coat walking fast, heels clicking against the pavement, her head turning just slightly but not enough. She didn't see the guy following half a block behind her, but Brayden did. Tall, hood up, shoulders hunched. Too close, too deliberate. Brayden's gut tightened. He opened the car door and leaned in. "Aubrey, sweetheart, stay here. Lock the door, okay?" "Where are you going?" "Just helping someone. I'll be right back." She nodded, big brown eyes wide, trusting. He shut the door, heard the click of the lock, and turned toward the woman. She was crossing the street now, picking up speed. The guy behind her moved faster too. Brayden didn't think, he just moved. He jogged across the street and caught up to her right, outside the coffee shop on the corner. "Hey, hey," he said loud enough to make her jump. "There you are, I've been looking for you." She blinked up at him, startled. Her lips parted like she was about to tell him he had the wrong person. Then he tilted his head slightly toward the man behind her, who had suddenly slowed down. "Oh," she said, catching on fast. "Yeah, sorry I ran off." Brayden offered his arm, and she took it without hesitation. They walked into the cafe together. The man outside hesitated for a second, then turned and walked away. Inside, she let out a breath that shook. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do. He was following me for blocks." "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, I think so. I just didn't want to be dramatic or anything." "You weren't," Brayden said. "You were smart." He looked at her for the first time, really looked. She was beautiful in a way that made no sense for a random Tuesday afternoon. Long chestnut hair, deep green eyes, expensive coat that didn't belong in their small town. She didn't look like she belonged here at all. "I'm Brayden," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated. "Lyla." He waited, but she didn't offer a last name. That was fine. He wasn't trying to pry. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" "No, I mean thank you, but I'll be okay. Can I sit here for a minute?" "Yeah, of course." He gestured toward a table in the back corner. "You want coffee?" She nodded once. "Please." Brayden ordered two. He brought them back and sat across from her. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in," she said, wrapping both hands around the paper cup. "I've got a kid," he said simply. "You learn to keep your eyes open." Lyla looked curious. "How old?" "6, her name's Aubrey. She's in the car, probably wondering why I'm taking so long." "You left her in the car." "Locked, juice box, snacks, windows cracked. She's fine. I just didn't want to bring her into a situation like that." Lyla stared at him for a second, then smiled. "You're a good dad." Brayden gave a tired half laugh. "Trying my best, it's not easy." "Just you and her?" "Yes." He looked down at his coffee. "Her mom left when she was barely 2, said she wasn't cut out for the whole parenting thing." Lyla's face softened. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. "We're doing okay. Work construction when I can get it. Do side jobs, handyman stuff. It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent." There was a long pause. Her gaze didn't leave his face. "I should go," she said finally, standing slowly. "Thank you again, Brayden." "Do you want me to walk you somewhere?" "No, I'm okay now." He nodded, though he didn't love the idea of her walking out alone. Lyla hesitated. "You don't recognize me, do you?" Brayden blinked. "Should I?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "No, that's a good thing." And then she turned and walked out. He watched her go, confused but also weirdly drawn to her. He didn't expect to see her again. But 2 days later, she showed up at the elementary school parking lot while he was picking up Aubrey. She stepped out of a sleek black car that looked like it cost more than his entire apartment and walked right toward him. "Hi," she said, smiling. Brayden turned, surprised. "Lyla." "I wanted to say thank you, properly." "You already did." "Well, I wanted to do more." She crouched a little and looked at Aubrey, who was holding Brayden's hand. "Hi, Aubrey, I'm Lyla's." Aubrey tilted her head. "Are you my dad's friend?" Brayden opened his mouth to answer, but Lyla beat him to it. "I'd like to be." Aubrey smiled. "You have shiny shoes." Lyla laughed. "Thank you, I like your unicorn backpack." Brayden was still staring at her. "Why are you really here?" Lyla stood. "I was scared that day. You didn't have to help me, but you did. I don't forget things like that." "Still doesn't explain how you found me." She hesitated, asked around. "I might have hired someone." Brayden frowned. "You what?" "I'm not stalking you," she said quickly. "I just wanted to thank you and maybe offer you a job." His eyebrows shot up. "What kind of job?" "I need help fixing up a property outside of town. You said you do handyman work." He studied her. "You're not from here, are you?" "No." "Why are you here?" She hesitated again. "I needed a break from my world." He waited, but she didn't elaborate. He looked down at Aubrey, then back at her. "Fine, I'll take a look at the property." "Tomorrow." "Yes, tomorrow." She smiled again, brighter this time, and walked back to her car. It pulled away smoothly, tires barely making a sound. Brayden stood there for a long second, watching the taillights disappear. Aubrey tugged on his hand. "Daddy, is she a princess?" Brayden laughed. "I don't know, kiddo." But he was starting to think maybe she was something close. The house wasn't what Brayden expected. He pulled up the gravel drive the next morning in his dented Jeep, Aubrey in the backseat munching on a slice of toast, and stared at the sprawling stone structure rising up from the pines. It looked like it belonged in a magazine not tucked behind a sleepy mountain town. The roofline stretched in elegant peaks, glass windows glinting in the morning light, and a wide porch wrapped around the front like it had something to say. Brayden parked beneath the shade of an old oak tree and got out, his boots crunching over the gravel. He opened the back door and lifted Aubrey out carefully. "You sure this is the right place?" he muttered. Aubrey shrugged, her gaze fixed on the big wooden doors. "Looks like a castle." Before he could answer, one of the doors opened and Lyla stepped out, only this time. She wasn't wearing heels or anything fancy. Just jeans, a soft navy sweater, and sneakers that looked brand new. She waved once. "Morning." Brayden nodded and walked up the steps with Aubrey's hand tucked in his. "You own this place." "I do now," she said. "Inherited it a few months ago. It's been empty since my uncle passed." Brayden glanced over the porch rail. "It's in good shape, you just need some maintenance." She nodded. "Plumbing's temperamental. Kitchen outlets are unreliable, and there's a leak somewhere upstairs." "I can take a look today. I'll need to bring more tools out if anything major's wrong." Lyla glanced down at Aubrey. "Would she be okay here for a bit? There's a sunroom off the kitchen. I set up some coloring books and toys in case she came." Brayden hesitated, but Aubrey tugged his hand. "I want to see it, Daddy." "You'll stay where she can see you." "Absolutely." Brayden crouched. "Okay, kiddo, you can stay in the sunroom if you promise to listen." Aubrey nodded solemnly. "Promise." Lyla led them inside. The foyer was wide, with polished floors and a staircase that curved like it had been carved out of a dream. Brayden followed her through a hallway that opened into a bright room lined with windows. A little table sat in the center, covered in crayons, puzzles, and juice boxes. Aubrey darted toward it. Whoa. I figured it might help, Lyla said. Brayden raised an eyebrow. You bought all this last night. There's a 24-hour toy store in the city, she said simply. They deliver. He didn't say anything, but something twisted in his chest. She led him through the house, pointing out problem areas and explaining what she wanted to change. Her voice was calm, but there was something clipped beneath it, like she was used to giving orders but trying not to sound like it. He knelt by a leaky pipe beneath the kitchen sink and tested the valves. You staying long? I'm not sure yet. I mean, this place doesn't exactly scream weekend getaway. She crouched beside him, resting her elbows on her knees. I grew up visiting here in the summers. My uncle used to run the place like his own little kingdom. Haven't been back in years. He looked over at her. So why now? Lyla ran a hand through her hair, her gaze flicking toward the hallway. Because I needed to remember who I was before everything got complicated. Brayden tightened the wrench around the pipe, giving her space. She exhaled slowly. You're wondering what I really do. I'm wondering why someone who clearly has money is hiding out in a town where the grocery store closes at 6. She laughed, but it was quiet. I'm not hiding. You sure? She met his eyes, said I needed a break. That wasn't a line. Brayden wiped his hands on a rag. You got a name people would recognize. I don't want it to matter here. He stood and crossed to the counter, checking the faulty outlet. Then why offer me a job? Because I trust you. He turned. You don't even know me. I know enough. You didn't hesitate when you saw someone in trouble. That tells me more than most people ever show. He didn't know what to say to that. Later, while Aubrey napped in the sunroom with a blanket pulled up to her chin, Brayden worked in silence. Lyla brought him water, kept her distance, but every so often he caught her watching him from the doorway, like she couldn't decide if she was glad he was there or trying to convince herself not to be. By afternoon, he'd patched the leak upstairs, rewired the faulty outlet, and fixed the lock on the back door. Everything else can wait, he said, collecting his tools. Lyla followed him out to the front porch. Do you have time tomorrow? I've got a few other jobs lined up, but I can squeeze in some hours. I'll pay well. He looked at her. I'm not doing this because of the money. I know, she said quietly. He loaded Aubrey into the car, and Lyla leaned down to wave. Bye, Aubrey. Aubrey yawned. Bye, Princess House. Lyla smiled at Brayden. You're good with her. She doesn't give me much choice. He got into the Jeep and started the engine. Lyla stepped back, arms crossed, watching them drive away. Halfway down the road, Aubrey said sleepily, She's lonely. Brayden glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Who? The lady with the big house. Brayden didn't answer, but the thought stuck with him all the way home. 2 weeks later, the house was changing. So was everything else. Brayden hadn't meant for it to become routine showing up each morning with Aubrey, setting her up in the sunroom, now filled with more toys than most preschools, then spending the next several hours patching, fixing, restoring. But it had, somehow. He'd repaired the upstairs bathroom, replaced cracked tiles in the foyer, and even refinished a deck that had been warped from years of snow. The house had whispered its history in creaking boards and dust-choked vents, and Brayden listened like it was speaking directly to him. Lyla was always around, but never in the way. She didn't hover. She asked questions sometimes, about tools or materials, but mostly she watched from the periphery, like she was trying to figure out how to belong in a place that used to feel like home. That morning, Brayden was in the library, if you could call it that, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a fireplace tall enough to walk into. He was replacing a cracked window pane when Lyla walked in holding 2 mugs. She handed him one, Earl Grey, figured it was safer than guessing if you're a coffee person. He accepted it with a quiet nod. Thanks. She wandered to the window and leaned against the wall, watching the trees sway beyond the glass. My uncle used to sit in here for hours, she said. He'd smoke cigars and read military history like it was scripture. This place always smelled like cedar and ashes. Brayden glanced at her. You were close. I thought I was, she said. Then the will came. He waited, sensing more. He left everything to me, no conditions, just a letter saying, make it yours. She turned to face him. I didn't know how to feel about that. You came back. I didn't know where else to go. He set the mug on the windowsill. You ever think about selling it? All the time, but I can't, not yet. Brayden didn't press. He returned to the window, securing the final pane in place. Lyla crossed the room and ran her fingers along a dusty shelf. This house is full of ghosts, not the scary kind, just memories that won't leave. Sometimes those are harder, he said. She looked up at him. You ever feel like you're carrying more than you know how to hold? He met her gaze, every day. The door creaked open then, and Aubrey peeked in, her hair a wild halo around her face. Can I have my snack now? Brayden smiled. Yes, kid, go grab it from your bag. She darted off before Lyla could say anything. He turned back to the window. She's different when she's here, he said. Lighter. Lyla was quiet for a beat. So are you. He didn't respond. That afternoon, as he was loading some tools into the Jeep, Lyla stepped outside, her arms folded against the breeze. I got a call this morning, she said. Brayden closed the trunk. Yeah. There's a gala in Manhattan next weekend, a fundraiser. I'm expected to be there. He raised a brow. Sounds like a long way from here. It is. He waited, sensing the hesitation in her voice. I don't want to go alone, and I don't want to go with any of the people I know there. Brayden leaned against the car. You asking me to crash a billionaire party? You be my guest, not a crash. He looked past her toward the house. That's not my world. I know, that's why I want you there. He studied her, trying to read the expression she wasn't quite showing. I'd need someone to watch Aubrey. Lyla nodded. I already thought of that. My assistant has a background in childcare. She's discreet, certified, and very good with kids, only if you're comfortable, of course. He considered it. Why me? Because you look at me like I'm a person, not a headline, and I don't want to forget that when I'm back in that room. Brayden exhaled slowly. I'll think about it. That night, after Aubrey was asleep, Brayden sat at the kitchen table, staring at a flyer from the plumbing supply store. He wasn't used to choices that felt like they mattered this much. He fixed things. He kept his daughter safe. He didn't wear tuxedos or sip champagne under chandeliers. But when he thought about Lyla in a room full of people who only saw her name or her net worth, something twisted inside him. He didn't like the idea of her standing alone. The next morning, he showed up at the house, toolbox in one hand and a garment bag in the other. Lyla opened the door, eyes widening slightly as she saw what he carried. I'll need help tying the tie, he said. She smiled without saying a word and stepped aside to let him in. 3 days later, he stood outside a towering hotel in Manhattan, the kind with doormen who wore gloves and marble floors you weren't supposed to scuff. Lyla emerged from the car in a dress that shimmered like starlight, not green, and took his arm like it had always belonged there. You ready? She asked. Not even a little. She laughed softly. Good, neither am I. They walked inside together, and for the first time since he'd met her, Lyla didn't look like she was running from something. She looked like she was walking toward it. The ballroom was a world apart. Brayden had never seen anything like it: crystal chandeliers that caught the light like falling stars, waiters gliding like shadows in pressed uniforms, and gold-accented walls that stretched into a vaulted ceiling painted with clouds. A string quartet played somewhere near the back, soft and flawless. He adjusted the collar of his tuxedo and tried not to look like he was counting the exits. Lyla stood beside him, her posture perfect, her gaze steady. She moved through the crowd with ease, but he could tell by the way her fingers curled slightly against his arm that she was holding herself together more than she let on. "You don't have to stay glued to me," she said under her breath as they passed a group of men in tailored suits. "You can wander, get a drink, ask someone about the oppressive stock market." "I'm not going anywhere," Brayden replied. "I promised I'd have your back. I meant it." That earned him a look, one that lingered, softer than before. Then her gaze shifted toward a man approaching from the far side of the room. His presence cut through the noise like a blade. Sharp suit, slicked back hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lyla," the man said, voice smooth and practiced. "I was beginning to think you'd finally written this world off." "I've considered it," she replied coolly. "But then I remembered how much you all love to speculate when I don't show up." The man's gaze flicked to Brayden, assessing with a polished kind of disdain. "And you've brought company. How unexpected." "This is Brayden Ellis," she said before the man could get too smug. "He's not from this world, which is probably why I trust him." Brayden extended a hand. "Nice to meet you." The man didn't take it. "I'm Victor Roth, her family's oldest headache." "I thought that was self-inflicted," Lyla said. Victor's smile tightened. "Touché." Brayden had no idea what lay beneath that exchange, but he could tell it went deep. Lyla's shoulders were taut in a way they hadn't been even when she'd first walked into that coffee shop. He didn't like it. "I'll let you get back to charming the room," Lyla said, already steering them away. Once they were out of earshot, Brayden leaned in. "Friend of the family." More like a vulture who kept circling after the funeral. She didn't elaborate. They made it through another 40 minutes of polite conversation and glancing commentary. Brayden didn't say much, but he didn't need to. Just being there solid, present seemed to anchor Lyla in a space she clearly didn't enjoy. When the music shifted and the lights dimmed slightly, she turned to him. "Dance with me before someone else gets the idea." Brayden hesitated, then nodded. He followed her onto the floor, unsure of his footing in more ways than one. But she stepped into his arms like she'd done it 100 times before, and suddenly the room fell away. "You're doing fine," she said softly, her hand resting lightly against his chest. "I'm counting every step." "Don't just look at me." So he did, and for the first time in a long, long while, he let himself feel something that wasn't tied to survival. "You know," she said after a moment, "I was 15 when I first told my uncle I never wanted this life. He laughed and said, 'It'll never let go of you.' Didn't understand what he meant until I tried to disappear." "You didn't disappear," Brayden said. "You just went somewhere real." Her breath caught just slightly. Then a voice sliced through the music. "Lyla." They both turned. A woman in a blood-red dress stood at the edge of the floor, older, poised, with eyes that missed nothing. Her presence made Lyla straighten instantly. "Elena," Lyla said, stepping back, "didn't expect to see you here." "You always say that," Elena replied, "and yet here we both are." Brayden didn't miss the chill between them. "Well," Elena continued, looking him over, "you've upgraded from your usual arm candy. This one looks like he might actually hold a conversation." "I don't recall inviting your opinion," Lyla said, voice flat. Elena raised a brow. "Still so prickly. You get that from your father." Lyla's jaw set. "He's not part of this conversation." No, Elena said. But you are, and you're making quite an impression parading around with someone who clearly doesn't belong here. Brayden stepped forward, calm but firm. You're right. I don't belong here, but she doesn't belong with people who treat her like this either. Elena blinked, caught off guard. Well, he has a spine, that's new. Come on, Lyla said, already turning away. They left the dance floor in silence. Once they reached the far side of the room, Lyla let out a long breath. Sorry, she muttered. She's from my father's side. Old money, sharper tongue than a scalpel. You don't have to explain. I just hate that they think they get to define me because of where I was born. Brayden nodded, then stopped letting them. She looked at him, something shifting behind her eyes. Come with me. Before he could ask where, she took his hand and led him through a side door, down a narrow hall, and into a private lounge lit with candles and low lamplight. It was empty, quiet, and for the first time that night, she looked like she could breathe. I needed a minute, she said, sinking onto a velvet settee, with someone who doesn't care about last names or trust funds. Brayden sat beside her. Care about you, that's it. She turned to him, expression unreadable. Do you know how long it's been since someone said that to me without wanting something in return? He didn't answer, he just reached for her hand. Brayden, she said quietly, I don't want this to be temporary. He held her gaze. It doesn't have to be. But your life is real. Mine's a maze of boardrooms and headlines. Then we make something in between, something that's ours. She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. I think I started falling the moment you told Aubrey to lock the doors. That was the moment I knew I'd do anything to protect you. She kissed him, then not tentative, not uncertain. It was the kind of kiss that made everything else fade. And when she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. I want to come back with you, not just for visits. I want a life. You sure? I've never been more certain. They left the gala before midnight. Lyla didn't say goodbye to anyone. Back in the small town, things moved fast. She bought a property on the edge of town, modest by her standards, beautiful by anyone else's, and turned the old mansion into a community retreat space for at-risk youth, honoring her uncle's will in a way he never could have imagined. Brayden kept working, not because he had to. Lyla made sure he never had to worry about money again, but because he loved fixing things. And now, he had something that didn't need fixing, a family. One warm September afternoon, Aubrey ran through the backyard, chasing bubbles while Lyla watched from the porch. Brayden joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. You sure about this? He asked. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder, every part of it. He kissed her temple, then we're home. And they were. Brayden leaned against the doorframe of the new 2-story farmhouse, watching Lyla adjust the picture frame on the living room wall. The late autumn light spilled through the tall windows, casting golden warmth against the hardwood floors. Outside, the wind stirred the trees that lined the property, the last of the leaves fluttering down like confetti. Left a little, he said, eyeing the frame. She stepped back, tilting her head. If it goes any further left, it'll be in another room. He crossed to her, setting his hand on the small of her back. Perfect, he said, not looking at the frame anymore. She smiled without turning. You say that about everything lately. That's because you're in it. She turned to face him then, her expression softer than he'd seen it in days. I got the final call this morning. The board accepted my resignation. He blinked. You're completely out. She nodded. No more meetings, no more press appearances, no more pretending to care about quarterly projections for things I never believed in. What did they say? They tried to talk me out of it, offered a seat on the board. Then they threatened legal action over breach of advisory contracts. He raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a fun phone call. I told them to read the clause I wrote myself 2 years ago. The one that gave me an ironclad exit if certain conditions weren't met. They didn't believe I'd ever use it. Brayden let out a low whistle. So that's it, you're free. Damn, her voice was quiet now, and I'm terrified. He took her hand, pulling her gently toward him. You don't have to be anything anymore. Not for them, not for anyone. I know, she whispered, but I've never had a life that didn't come with a script. You've got one now. You're writing it every day. Her eyes found his, steady and certain. Then, I want to write the next part with you. Before he could say anything, the front door creaked open and Aubrey burst in, cheeks flushed from the brisk air. Daddy, come see, she shouted, bouncing in her boots. There's a deer in the field. He crouched. Did you scare it off? No, it's still there. I think it knows we live here now. Brayden looked at Lyla, who was already grabbing her coat from the hook. Let's go see your new neighbor, she said. They stepped out onto the porch, the cold nipping at their skin. In the distance, a doe stood near the edge of the woods, still and watching. Aubrey clutched Brayden's hand, her excitement barely contained. Lyla stood beside them, quiet for a long moment. You know, she said finally, I used to think peace was something you had to earn, after enough success or the right kind of recognition. And now I know it's what you protect, with the right people. Later that night, after Aubrey had fallen asleep under a blanket of stars and storybooks, Brayden found Lyla on the back porch, wrapped in an old sweater, staring up at the sky. I've been thinking, she said as he joined her, maybe we should open up the barn. He sat beside her. You mean the one with the collapsed roof and the owl family living inside? That's the one. He chuckled. What for? I don't know. A workshop. A space for local kids to build things. You said you wanted to teach Aubrey how to use tools one day. Why not teach others too? You want to turn a broken barn into a community center. I want to build something that lasts. He leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. You already have. The next spring, the barn was rebuilt beam by beam. Brayden brought in friends from his crew, and Lyla coordinated donations and local outreach. By summer, it was humming with life. Aubrey painted signs with her friends, and Brayden led workshops on everything from birdhouses to bicycle repair. Lyla worked beside him, not above or behind. She planted wildflowers at the edge of the property, helped organize weekend events, and taught kids how to make herb gardens in old coffee tins. She was no longer a name on a board or a face behind a foundation. She was Lyla, the woman who smiled with her whole heart and wiped sawdust off her jeans without a second thought. One evening, after a long day of planting and hammering and laughing, Brayden pulled her aside, just out of sight of the others. I've been thinking, he said. She looked up. That sounds dangerous. He took her hands. You changed everything, for me, for Aubrey, for yourself, and I want to make sure you know I'm not going anywhere. I never thought you would. He kissed her forehead, then let's make it official. Her breath caught. You mean? I want to marry you, Lyla, not because we need the papers or the party, but because I want to wake up next to you every day for the rest of my life. I want to argue over paint colors and dance in the kitchen when the radio's too loud. I want to build this life with you, brick by brick. She didn't answer, not with words. She kissed him, arms tightening around his neck, and when she finally pulled back, her eyes were shining, but not from tears. Yes, she said, yes to all of it. The wedding was simple, held in the field behind the house, beneath the same oak tree that had stood watch over them since the day they met. Aubrey walked ahead of them in a crown of wildflowers, tossing petals with a grin that could light a city. Brayden wore his best button down, and Lyla wore a dress that fluttered like fresh linen in the breeze. They exchanged vows. They wrote themselves vows that talked about second chances and choosing love over fear and building something that no storm could shake. Afterward, they danced in the barn with fairy lights overhead and music drifting through open doors. Friends from town toasted them with lemonade and homemade cider. Aubrey stayed up past bedtime, spinning barefoot in the grass. And when the stars came out, Brayden pulled Lyla close and whispered, "This is the part where the story really begins." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "Then, let's make it the kind people remember." They did together, always.